Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm Hannah Weissman. I'm the executive director here at the Magnes, and it is my pleasure to welcome you. We have one more session to go before our headliner, and I am pleased to introduce Samson Koletkar, who is the world's only Indian Jewish stand-up comedian, who's going to bring us through the end of this session. He'll do his set, and then we'll have about 10-ish minutes for Q&A at the end. So think of your questions, and I'll run the mic at the end. So without further ado, please join me in welcome Samson Koletkar.
Wonderful. Hello. Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes. One more time for Hannah, everybody. Thanks so much for that wonderful introduction. I see everybody's kind of spread all around. I will give a quick suggestion if you guys all want to cuddle up further in and everybody comes up front. That'd be nice. But if you're comfortable where you are, be comfortable where you are. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate one person taking the lead and the only person taking the lead. So I appreciate that. You know, I like Hannah, you got the introduction so right. She did say world's only Indian Jewish stand-up comedian, which is technically correct. You can Google and confirm, okay? But in the past, somebody introduced me as the world's only Indian Jew. And I was like, dude, I have parents. So thank you, that was nice, I appreciate that. Thanks you all for coming, this is wonderful. Do we have any non-Jewish folks in the audience? Oh, we got a few. Hello, welcome. Okay. Keep an eye on them, everybody. Okay. I appreciate you guys coming in. Thank you. This is great. I am originally from Bombay, or Mumbai for the politically annoying, and raised Jewish, which means here in America, I get asked a lot of questions. You know, questions like, really? Are you really Jewish? What are they expecting me to say? Oh no, you got me. You are so good at identifying people just by looking at them. You must be Columbus. Thank you, that is an Indian joke, everybody, yes? If you know your... The other question I get a lot, were you born Jewish? No. I was born a baboon. And growing up, I felt better than everyone else, so I became a Jew. Thank you, that is a Jewish joke, yeah. Followed by the next question, about your parents Jewish? No. My father is Christian, my mother is Muslim. They hated each other so much, they raised me Jewish. I see one head shake. And you know what I've also realized, what I've also noticed, is all these questions that I get usually come from other Jews. Almost like saying, oh, you are Jewish? Hold on, first I had to validate you. Are you really Jewish? Were you born Jewish? About your parents Jewish? Now, here's the whole backstory. My dad, born and raised in a Jewish family. My mom, born and raised in a Hindu family. Got married to my dad, converted when she got married. So when I was born, she was Jewish, which according to the Jewish logic makes me Jewish. But I have stopped explaining this to any and everybody, except when I'm on stage. And here's why. One time I started explaining, oh, you know, my mom was born and raised in a Hindu family. Somebody yelled out, you're not a Jew. I'm like, hold on, Sherlock Holmes. Let me finish my statement. And then I explained that she converted when she married, so she was Jewish when I was born. According to Jewish law, doesn't that make me Jewish? And he goes, I don't know, she converted. I was like, yeah, that's the whole thing I just explained. Is that a problem? And he goes, no, but you know, She converted. And I'm like, okay, if that is the big issue, let's think about this a little bit. Now, you all know who was the first Jew? Room full of Jews, nobody sure? This is the good kind of Jews. What's that? Abraham, right? And how was Abraham the first Jew? According to the story, one day he heard this voice that said, Abraham, from now on, you are a Jew. And you realize, I am speaking like the voice of God, speaking to Abraham in an Indian accent. Get used to it. Here's my other question. Why do we always give God this very solid masculine voice? We don't know what God sounded like. It could have been, Abraham, you are a Jew now, right? We don't know. But let's give God the benefit of the doubt, as if we haven't done that enough already. And let's say God had a very solid masculine voice, and he went, Abraham, from now on, you are a Jew. And Abraham is like, who are you? I am God. Really? Are you really God? Were you born a God? About your parents' gods? And I guess God must have been happy. He's like, hey, look, I chose the right Jew. He's asking me all the questions. So Abraham was the first Jew, but then he married Sarah, not born Jewish, no Jewish parents, so obviously not Jewish. And in Judaism, the mother has to be Jewish for their sons to be Jewish. Their son Isaac isn't a Jew either. So pretty much, Abraham was the first and the last Jew. After him, there are really no Jews in the world. So welcome to all the non-Jews in the room. Nice to see you all. Now the few don't have to be watched after. Okay. I'm glad some of you laughed at that joke, because Mr. Sherlock Holmes from earlier wasn't done with me. Right? Comes up to me after my show and he goes, you know, you are right. Sarah wasn't born Jewish. But you don't know. Maybe she converted. And I, dude, that is the whole bloody point of my story. So you are okay with the hypothetical possibility that Sarah might have converted, but you have a problem with the fact that my mom did convert. You are so intelligent. Were you born intelligent? About your parents intelligent? Uh-oh, somebody's not happy. No, you're fine, you're fine. I see something, I say something. The American way. I am so glad you guys are here. You know, this is my favorite part of the week. I love to talk to an audience. I have also realized audiences like to talk to me too. Sometimes during the show, but usually afterwards, they'll give me some feedback. Yeah, tell me things like, go back to where you come from. Which my friends also think is racist, and I'm like, dude, at least that person is a considerate racist. I will explain. Because I know that I look ambiguous unless I tell them where I'm from. They're not sure where I'm from. So they're like, hey, I don't like you, and I want you to go back. But I don't want you to go back to the wrong country and get into trouble. You know where you're from? Just go back to where you come from. Be safe in your own country. That is one considerate racist. I like this guy. Also, that phrase, go back to where you come from, it's a very American experience for me. Only heard it in America. Because I grew up in India, which, like America, is also a melting pot of the world where people from around the world have lived together for centuries. But unlike America, in India, you can argue and disagree with anybody on anything. Nobody ever tells you to go back to where you come from. In India, they tell you to go to Pakistan. Welcome to planet Earth. It's the same thing everywhere. I'm glad you guys are laughing. One time I told that joke at a show. There was an Indian couple sitting in the front. And while the audience started laughing, they started discussing. I'm like, what are you guys discussing? They go, oh, we are from Pakistan. And I said, well, in that case, where do people in Pakistan tell you to go when they don't like your jokes? Because I'm genuinely curious, okay? I want to go to every single country in the world and tell a joke that is offensive to that country. Just to see where they send you next. Call it the Offensive Joke World Comedy Tour. Stopped over in Berkeley. Thank you, everybody. You can tell me where to go next. You know, I've actually met a few Pakistani folks in my audience, and I've genuinely asked them, like, where do you actually tell people to go when you don't like their jokes? I'm genuinely interested. And a lot of them have said, we just tell them to go to hell. And I was like, that is not good advertising for Pakistan. If the only place you think worse than you is hell, you know, there's 190 countries, pick one. Doesn't have to be right, just keep my tour going. You just ended my tour. So if you have any Pakistani friends, pass the message. I also live in the East Bay now. Is everybody here pretty much East Bay? Anybody not from the East Bay? Oh, wow, quite a few. Where from? Just Marin, San Francisco, Palo Alto, and then you said? Solano County, okay. And then we had some hands over here. Boston, wonderful. What brought you from Boston to Berkeley? Nice people? I so want to make a snarky comment about it, but I am in Berkeley, so I will not. I know. That's what I was talking, anyway. Now, this is nice. Yeah, Berkeley, Bay Area. Are you from here and you went there, or? Oh, so you're kind of coming back home, visiting friend, family? Okay. And then she's like, hey, let's go sit amongst more Jews. As if, no? Yeah? All right. Okay. And then we had some more hands in the back. Where from?
I'm from Missouri.
Missouri. Wow. I saw this hand, I was talking here, and then you took off, but okay. And then Albuquerque. Wow, did you guys all come here for this event? Or you happen to be, to see me? Wow. Usually the comedians pander to the audience. It's nice to see the other way around. I've actually been to Albuquerque once. And we did the Segway tour. And I asked the Segway guy, like, what's the best thing about Albuquerque? He says, there are 4 roads that take you out of the city. I guess you took one. And then Missouri, isn't that a whole state? Missouri is a state, right? You know, just my observation, okay? Because I ask these questions in a lot of shows just to know where people are from. And anytime people give me the name of a city, like Boston or Albuquerque, you're like, okay, I get it. You live in this city. Anytime somebody gives me the name of a state, I assume that you live in some shitty part of the state. Because they're like, hey, you don't know where I live. Let me just give you the whole bigger geography. But thank you. I appreciate you being here. I live in the East Bay, so this joke for those who are traveling, maybe a little bit to catch up on, but I used to live in Fremont because, obviously, right? And that's like the Indian headquarters of the Bay Area. Used to live in Fremont, but then my marriage went wayward, which is why, ladies and gentlemen, I now live in Hayward. Uh-oh, the disappointment in the room. You know what I've realized when I moved to Hayward is that Hayward has now become the land of single Asian dads. SAD for short. Because I moved there in the pandemic, I got a townhome, wanted to rent the downstairs. Half the rental applications I received were other Asian dads from Fremont, whose marriage also went wayward. So they were also moving to Hayward. I was like, welcome to the sad land. You know who likes that joke the most? My 15-year-old daughter. Has anyone here been to Hayward? Okay, very nice. I don't know if you saw this, but when I moved to the city, I saw these signs all over the city of Hayward that says, Hayward, no room for racism. Which to me sounds like Hayward is so full of racists that there is no room for racism. Like, dude, what did I get myself into? I should go back to Fremont. They still have some room for racism. Probably why Fremont keeps getting voted as one of the happiest cities in America every year. You guys know this? There's a list that gets published every year. The happiest cities in America, Fremont's always at the top. 2026, it was number 1. Because Fremont's figured out in America to be happy, you need some room for racism, everybody. So make some room in your own city, move it up the list. Also, as a resident of the East Bay, I realized that I live in the poor part of the Bay Area. And I realized I live in the poor part of the Bay Area. Every time I got on any bridge, the first thing I had to do was pay a toll. Every bridge, right? Going from Oakland to San Francisco, you pay a toll, not the other way around. Going from Richmond to San Rafael, you pay a toll, not the other way around. Going from Hayward to San Mateo, you pay a toll, not the other way around. Going from Fremont to Menlo Park, you pay a toll, not the other way around. And so I looked up, there are 3 more bridges that connect to the East Bay. Going from Carquinez to Vallejo, you pay a toll, not the other way around. Going from Martinez to Benicia, you pay a toll and not the other way around. And going from Antioch to whatever is on the other side of that bridge. Okay? Basically, if you want to escape the East Bay, it's going to cost you money, okay? You can't escape poverty without getting poorer. And I was thinking, why? Why is it that we collect the toll in the direction that we do? Why not the other way? So I did some research, found out 2 things. One, the toll is only collected in one direction to reduce congestion. And I'm like, that is nice. But why in this direction? Why not in that direction? And then it said the toll is collected when there's a large population moving to an urban center of employment, which basically means that if you live in the poor part of the Bay Area, want to get to the rich part of the Bay Area to make some money, first of all, slow down. Get in a line, pay a toll, come in one at a time. We don't want too many of you crowding our spaces. And after you're done what you need to do, get the hell out. Don't stop, don't slow down, don't pay a toll, don't need to see your ass, go back to where you came from. Go back to those other poor people you call family, have a good time. Uh-oh, everybody looks very sad. Hey, progressive Bay Area, right? Thank you, one person. I'd also heard all my life that a human life is priceless. Not in the Bay Area. I was driving my kids from Hayward to Fremont, got in the fast track lane. The toll to my exit was $14. But because there were 3 of us in the car, we were driving for free. I immediately turned to my kids and I said, look, right now you are worth $7 each. And your worth goes up and down depending on the time of the day. And on nights and weekends, you are worthless, okay? All right, we got some parents, huh? I'm gonna tell you a new joke, okay? This is a new one I'm trying to figure out, but you know, I've also realized, living in California as a Bay Area resident, I've lived here for 25 years now, right? It's been a minute. And I've learned that living in California makes me a better person than a lot of other Americans. There we go. Some of you are happy to hear that finally, okay. Right? Like, one of the groups of Americans that I know I'm better than is rednecks. And I realized that I, as a Californian, am better than the rednecks when I was watching that movie Borat Part 2. If any of you has not seen the movie, it's Sacha Baron Cohen, who disguises himself as an immigrant from Kazakhstan and is in America and capturing a lot of stuff on his camera. And at one point in the movie, he is homeless in the deep south and goes to live with this redneck family deep in the woods, but keeps his camera running while he's living with them, just to capture all the crazy conspiracy theories that these people believe. Things like Hillary Clinton is running a sex child trafficking ring out of a pizza parlor in New York. I saw that. I never felt better about myself because unlike those uneducated, uncultured, uncouth rednecks, I would never let a homeless person live in my house. Clap if you have ever let a homeless person live in your house. Nobody. That's what makes us better, except Missouri. Get out of here. Okay. Thank you, Missouri. That's what, no? Okay, that again made you guys. See, you know, so comedians, when they tell jokes and everybody goes, ha, 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 they say, hey, he brought the house down. This is my version of bringing the house down. Uh-oh. I get ooh and growls. You know. Here's another group of people, since you guys like this my stuff so much. Here's another group of people that I realize I'm better than, which is the Mormons. Because they are Mormons, and we are Californians. By the way, did you guys know there's one state in America that solved the homelessness crisis? The state of Utah housed 95% of their homeless, like all 9 of them, right? Do you all also know there's one state in America that was allocated and spent $24 billion to solve the homelessness crisis and ended up housing 0? No points for guessing that one. That state is California. You know what that means? That means not only will we not let a homeless person live in our house, we will spend $24 billion to ensure they don't live in any house. Okay, let's lighten up, everybody. That went too hard. You guys are like, we came here to celebrate. All right. For those of you who live in the East Bay, have you guys seen these signs all over the East Bay put up for Anne Fong? Yeah. All right. The lawyer, right? Right. This is what the whole sign says. Something wrong. Call Anne Fong. If you haven't seen one, on your drive back or driving around the Bay Area next time, just look up from your phone. You will see one. They're everywhere, okay? I saw that sign the first time I was also driving. I immediately called. I was like, hello, Anne Fong. Something's wrong. My check engine light is on. Can you help? No? Okay, hang up. It is such a vague ad, no? Something wrong, call Anne Fong, but it rhymes really well and it got stuck in my head and I have this urge to keep calling her every few hours. I wake up the next morning, hello, Anne Fong. Something's wrong. There are no more Jews in the world. Can you help? No? Okay, hang up again. You know what I also realized is that Anne Fong has a fan club in the Bay Area. Those fans like to go to comedy shows. Sure enough, they were at my show, heard the whole joke, had some feedback for me at the end. One of them comes up, she goes, you know, Anne Fong is an inspiration to a lot of us. She has worked really hard. She started from nothing. She has become something. I'm like, relax, Fan Fong. I'm not doubting her credentials. She's obviously doing well, buying vague billboards all over the East Bay that bring her no business. Who are you, her campaign manager? Why are you throwing all these words at me? Put some of those words on the billboards. That would be more useful. Yeah, dude, I was so mad that night. As soon as I got home, the first thing I did. Hello, Anne Fong. Something's wrong. Your fans don't get jokes. Can you help? No? Okay, hang up. Hasn't solved a single problem of mine, false advertising. I also heard this song recently. It's an old classic by Joe Cocker, and the song goes, "You are so beautiful to me." Do you guys know this song? No, everybody knows this song. It's a beautiful song, but why does he say "to me"? I think he should have stopped at "you are so beautiful." That is nice. Putting "to me" at the end sounds like she has a really good personality. Don't say "to me" at the end of anything nice. It's the worst thing to say, all right? I don't want any of you come up to me after the show and be like, "Samson, you are so funny." To me. Well, what? I don't want to hear that. You know, I also grew up watching a lot of horror movies. What I found interesting was in the Hollywood horror movies, the tool to fight the ghost is a cross. Anytime you pull out a cross, the ghost is like, "Oh no, can't cross the cross." But I also grew up watching a lot of Bollywood horror movies in which the tool to fight the ghost are all the Hindu symbols. You pull one out and the ghost is like, "Oh no, can't cross that." Which made me wonder, why are all the ghosts in the movies so religious? And if they are there any atheist ghosts? And if there are, how do you scare them? What are you going to show them? I'd be like, "Hey, here's a business card of a psychiatrist." Like, "Oh no." Because you know, none of your symbols will work, right? What are you going to do? Like, "Hey, here's a cross, not working. Here's another symbol, not working. Hello, Anne Fong, something's wrong. My symbols don't work, can you help?" She won't help, I guarantee. Speaking about religion, I also grew up in Mumbai, attending the only functioning Jewish school in Mumbai. There's one. And as a part of the annual curriculum, we also used to go on these week-long winter camps. Like you have summer camps here in America. Summers are unbearable in India, right? So we used to do winter camps, go there in like December. And every single camp was organized by some organization from the West. There was an American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee with offices all over the West. And every year they would have a volunteer who would come and conduct the camp and teach us how to live Jewish. Because 2,000 years of Jewish history in India, but we needed a white dude from America to come and teach us how. And you know, one of the sessions that I remember that we did was this whole hypothetical scenarios. They would put you in a hypothetical scenario to teach you what you should be doing in life. Here's the one that I found, the one that I remember the most, okay? One time, 50 kids sat in a circle, and this lead goes, "Imagine that you are in Nazi Germany, about to be put on a train to be taken to the concentration camp and put to death, but given one last choice. You could convert and live or die. What would you choose?" And then every kid in the camp goes, "I would die, I would die, I would die, I would rather die. Why would I convert? I won't convert, I would die, die, die." Everybody was willing to die except me. I went, "I would convert." And all the 49 kids looked at me like, "Dude, did you forget who paid for the camp? You're supposed to die." Like, why should we die? Like, what have you achieved by dying? You just died. Instead, I will convert and live, and I'm hoping out there somewhere there's another Jewish camp of 50 Jewish kids being asked the exact same question. And I'm hoping in those 50, there is one female who decides to convert and live. And then somehow the two of us get together, produce a little army of Jews who beat the Nazis and free the rest of the Jews while you guys just died. So go ahead and die. I'll see you in the movies. Okay. You guys pull back quite a bit. You go like, "Haha, I'm done, shut down." Okay, we'll keep it light. It's afternoon. All right, I'll tell you one more. I'm a very forgetful person, especially when it comes to names. I can't remember people's names. I'll meet somebody new. I'm like, hey, I'm Samson. They're like, hey, I'm so-and-so. 2 minutes into the conversation. Oh, no. What's your name? You just told me your name. I should remember your name. It's terrible, okay? But then I found out there's medical research that suggests there's a part of the brain that remembers names, and that part has not evolved equally for everybody. Exhibit A. But I can't use that as an excuse in a conversation. I can't be like, ooh, sorry, I forgot your name. It's not you, it's me. My brain, it hasn't evolved. That doesn't help. I also don't remember details that people tell me about themselves because I don't care. I don't, right? I'm talking to somebody, they're telling me all about themselves. They're all like, me, 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 me. I'm like, dude, first, what's your name? Can't even remember your name. How do I get past that? But it does make it very awkward sometimes when I meet somebody at a party or an event. They'll walk up to me and be like, hey, Samson, the last time we met, you had said so and so and so. How is all of that going? And I, dude, first of all, who the hell are you? And second, how do you remember so much about me? And that's where I feel really miserable. I'm like, how selfish and self-centered am I that they remember so much about me and I remember nothing about them? Until recently. A friend told me, you know, Samson, the reason I remember so much about you so easily is because you are a really good storyteller. So when you tell me things about your life, you say it in such an interesting way, it's very easy for me to remember. And I was like, okay, so it's not me, it's you. You are a boring, uninteresting person who tells boring, uninteresting stories. No wonder I don't remember anything about you. Learn to tell better stories, I'll remember you too. See, I realize every time I do that joke, some people laugh while a lot of people seem to be self-reflecting. Because I hear a lot of thinking going on right now. I'm also a big fan of proverbs in the English language. You know, proverbs like, if you fail to prepare, prepare to fail. A lot of wisdom captured in a few words. And I've been collecting proverbs all my life, and the longer I've done that, the more I've come to realize not all of them are really that wise. A lot of them just contradict each other, which is very confusing. And I'll give you guys some examples of confusing proverbs. Because I've heard a lot of people say, put your best foot forward, but save the best for last. Which one is it? Also, I think both of those proverbs, pretty terrible advice. Put your best foot forward, don't. Because now you have set the bar way too high. Let's be honest, none of us is good enough to keep meeting that high bar all the time, so all you're going to do is disappoint people. So how about just put a foot forward and then live a calm, relaxed life, don't take on so much stress. And save the best for last, also something I believed in strongly growing up as a child, especially when I sat down to eat. I would take my favorite thing and I'd put it aside because I wanted to save the best for last until I realized, what if I die? Choking on the shitty food I don't like in the first place. It's like, why did I do that? I think we should have the best and don't have the rest. Sounds like a better way to live. Let's make that a proverb, Berkeley. No? Okay. Here's one more example. You guys heard this one. A stitch in time saves 9. This is not a very popular American proverb. A stitch in time saves 9 very literally means if there's a tear in the cloth and you put 1 stitch now, it prevents the cloth from tearing more and having to put 9 stitches later on. So like do a little bit of work now, you can save a lot of work later. A stitch in time saves 9. And suddenly this feels less like a comedy show, more like a TED Talk. Because I see some of you going, who knew we were going to learn something in a comedy show? So a stitch in time saves 9, but we will cross that bridge when we get to it. Like once again, which one is it? Do you want me to do things as quickly as possible or as late as possible? Also, whoever came up with, we will cross that bridge when we get to it, I don't think understands how bridges work. That is when you cross a bridge, when you get to it. Has there ever been a person in the history of bridges that crossed one before they got to it? It's like, why is that even a proverb? How did that proverb even come about? Was it some genius kid walking around with his dad centuries ago, comes across this thing and he's like, oh, daddy, what is that? Dad's like, son, that is a bridge. I want to cross it right now. Calm down, son. We will cross that bridge when we get to it. Like, oh, daddy, that is so wise. I want to go tell the whole world. Also, whoever came up with, will cross that bridge when we get to it, never lived in the East Bay. Because in the East Bay, you don't get to cross the bridge when you get to it. You got to pay a toll, slow down. All right, here's one more example. Actions speak louder than words, which I actually like. It's one of my favorite proverbs. I live by that. Actions speak louder than words, but a cut from a word cuts deeper than a cut from a sword. Which literally means words can hurt more. The next time I hear somebody say that to me, I am going to throw every insult and every slur and everything mean and everything nasty over and over and over and over till they can't take it anymore. And when they've had enough, I will stab them. And be like, what hurts more now? The stabby stabby. You know why? Actions speak louder than words. Now put your best foot forward and go get a stitch in time. Do I have more? Yes, I do, everybody. Here's one. It's a short one, okay? You've heard this one for sure. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Only if I like you. If you are a boring, uninteresting person, then out of sight, out of mind. All right, one more, last one, okay? Oh, somebody sad. Have you guys heard this one? When you have not what you like, you must like what you have. No, another TED Talk. Look, again, it suggests learn to be content. Don't be greedy. Don't always want more. When you have not what you like, you must like what you have. But if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Now, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again is a guaranteed way of getting a restraining order. And when you have not what you like, you must like what you have. Sounds like a quote from a happily married person. It's like, how long have you been married? 30 years. What's the secret? Well, when you have not what you like, you must like what you have. Yeah, have fun on your drive back, couples. That's going to make for an interesting conversation. And if things go wrong, call Ann Fong, okay? Don't. All right, I know we got to wrap up, and we have a little Q&A section. I'll leave you with one last thing, which is if you want to find me, you can literally Google Indian Jewish comedian. There is only one in the world. You'll find my website, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of that. I just released my 1 hour called Bombay to the Bay, so if you guys can go view that, that will help me with my own views of the video. And other than that, you guys have been a fantastic audience to me. Thank you so much for having me, everybody. Appreciate it. Back to Hannah. Oh.
Any questions?
Are you really Jewish?
I'm just curious if you see similarities between Jewish American humor and Indian Jewish humor.
I did not for the longest time, right? Because I'll tell you the biggest shift that I had coming here, hearing this whole idea of Jews are cheap, that never existed as a stereotype in India. I always say, like, I don't understand how that even comes about. Because, see, Jews came to India 2,000 years ago before the real estate prices were real high. But then once the Jews move in, you know it's going up. So we upgrade everyone's values. I don't know how, but that was something different. We also don't have the American stereotypes as much. So my biggest challenge coming here was, how am I going to relate to an American audience coming from an Indian background where I don't know the inside jokes? That was my biggest worry. And then I had done a workshop with Eddie Brill, who was the late night booker for David Letterman. And he changed my thinking completely, 180 degrees. Because he said, for a lot of the comedians that we hear, it's the same old stereotypes being regurgitated over and over again and again. You are coming with a brand new, fresh perspective. And I'm like, oh, you just made my handicap my strength, so thank you. And then never look back. So I find it different. Because, and that's one of the reasons why some of my takes also turn the tables on its head, like go back to where you come from. It's not as offensive to me, because I've heard a variation of it in India too, right? And I'm sure it's everywhere in the world. Someday I'll make a world tour out of it. So it is slightly different, but universal humor eventually. So it's all a human experience. So a lot of overlap, but just some of those underlying undertones are slightly different.
Does it have the irony that's American?
I think irony, satire, sarcasm, all of those things, right? It's also a universal humor thing. So there's a lot of satire in India, there's a lot of satire here. And that's my style. I like more of the satirical stuff and pointing out like the juxtapositions and the, in some ways, inconsistency and hypocrisy of things. That's where I find my humor, and I find it everywhere, both America, India. If I go to UK, I see the same things. It's everywhere. Sure. Anybody else? Oh, there's one here. There's one there. We'll go from there to here.
Okay. Sorry.
Did you have a hand up? Missouri.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
If you're from Missouri, you'll also hear a lot of questions about, are you really Jewish? And how did this come to be? And et cetera, et cetera. My question is, I saw you years ago, you were emceeing some kind of really cool Oakland stand-up thing that was only $10, and you were the MC, and that's why I came today. What is that event still going on? Are you still, I don't remember what it was called.
So
it's really fun.
It's not $10 now, but
That's okay.
I've been running that show for 17 years. So it started on May 1st, 2009. So right now we are literally on the 17-year cusp of that show. It's called Comedy Oakland. I run shows in multiple venues in Oakland. Right now there are 2. And it's every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's a lineup of comedians, so everybody's doing 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how experienced they are. And it's just a very casual, light environment. You get food and drinks at restaurants that are attached to the shows that we do. And thanks for plugging the show. You can find about that also on my website. And yeah, come check it out anytime. That's like my kitchen. That's where I go and experiment and figure out the jokes and tweak and make it better. And then once they're ready, then I come up to venues like these to deliver. Yes, there was one up here. Thank you for coming back.
You spoke about the reception in Jewish audiences. I'm curious about your experience in the back and forth with Indian audiences as an Indian Jew.
Indian people in general, right? Not just Jewish Indians. So I'll tell you one of the jokes that one of the lines I have in my jokes, which I was talking about earlier. In India, growing up Jewish, and you have Pune ancestry, I don't know if you experienced this. Have you lived in Pune for a while? No. Your dad is, right? Because in India, most people didn't know what Jews were. So anytime I said I'm a Jew, they were like, no reference. And then I was like, do you know Israel? And they go, oh, yeah, like Palestine. I'm like, yeah, same thing. It's like India, Pakistan, same thing, right, eventually. So if you really look back at it. So that was the thing. I always had to give them a reference. There was an old Bollywood movie called Yehudi. And then like, have you guys heard of that movie? And they're like, oh, yes, we have heard of that one. And what I discovered recently, I knew about this. There's the first women actors in Bollywood were all Jewish women. taking on Hindu names because Hindu women weren't allowed on screen. So the Jewish women were the pioneers of Bollywood. There's a movie directed by an Australian documentary filmmaker on Amazon Prime called Shalom Bollywood. And I watched that, and my mind was blown how detailed he went with the entire history. Like, I'd heard of it, but that movie actually showcased the whole chronology of it. It's amazing. So that was the most that I had heard, was the unfamiliarity of not knowing what Judaism meant. And now the world is connected more, so they do understand what Jews are. And generally speaking, India, Israel do align pretty closely as well. So it has been okay. Now when I say Jew, they're like, okay, yeah, we know who you are. But we didn't know you are from India, because that's unusual. Numbers-wise, 1.5 billion people in India, less than 10,000 Jews. So as a joke, I have to tell everybody, like, if this face is India, then the Jews are the red dot. Yes.
What kind of...
It's on.
On that note, are Jews remaining in India? Has there been discrimination? I mean, we hear about the anti-Muslim discrimination in India. What's it like for the Jewish community in India today?
So from what I've heard so far in my life, probably India is the only country where the Jews were never persecuted. And that's another big distinction between the Indian Jewish experience and the Western Jewish experience, right? Like, there's a lot of Holocaust influence on the West, but that doesn't appear in the Indian Jewish discussions as much because we just grew up amongst the Indian people. I remember one time we were at a restaurant, local restaurant in Mumbai, and there was a French couple sitting in the table from across us. This is Mumbai, so like everybody's crunched together. You don't always get your own tables. So they were in the table in front of us, and I saw her T-shirt, and it had Hebrew writing on it. And I was like, Mazel Tov, Mashimka. And they were like, what the hell? Did somebody just speak to us in Hebrew? And they're like, how do you know Hebrew? I'm like, because I'm Jewish. And they're like, what the hell? There are Jews in India? And so there's a lot of that discovery that happened for the longest time. But Jews have also blended so much into the Indian culture that you can't look at somebody and be like, that looks Jewish. There's no Jewish look in India per se. So as far as I know, no persecution, no discrimination. The attack that happened in 2008, the one that got televised around the world, that did change the logistics of things. Because I remember going back for Simchat Torah, which was like the most fun festival that we have in Mumbai. And I would see army guards outside of every synagogue, which I had never seen growing up. So that dynamic has changed a little bit. But otherwise, the country is fine. And like I said, Indians and Israelis are very closely connected. And even in America, one of my friends used to make a joke about how the top 1% and 2% are all Indians and Jews, and I have that market nailed down. So it's also very similar in terms of the stereotypes that I hear, right? Over here, Indians are all engineers and doctors, and Jews are all engineers and lawyers and things like that. So there's a lot of value for education and family and everything. Very overlapping. I have another half who can attest.
Thank you very much. We're going to wrap up here. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good one.